Poetry, poetry, come to me. This year, the Magic Teapot joined our teaching team. This beautifully patterned teapot has visited every country in the world. In each country, the people have painted part of the pattern onto the teapot. It flies from country to country, bringing poetry to the people. One fateful day in Japan, the lid of the teapot fell and broke. The people of Japan were so upset that they fixed it in the kintsugi style with real gold. This is the magical story which was woven for the children on the first day that the Magic Teapot came to Small World. It came to share poetry with the children at a special tea party that happens once a week in a small group. The way it works is that we pour our tea and say, "Poetry, poetry, come to me," to bring the poems to our tea time. Each group decorates the tea table for the one that follows. Then we either choose poems from a poetry book to read, or we create our own. We have created 2 sets of poems. One where the children were given a set of magnetic poetry words to choose the ones they liked the look of, and then to create a poem in a pattern form. This was a really fun and free way of making poetry. It also created a real interest in the words, thus introducing emergent reading. Here are some of our favorites. It's sort of who nothing was after Food Week wrote. Before she everything it, do something and can hear your. Weather so on more quiet, so anything almost life himself like. We also created some really fun alphabet poems where each group had to think of a word for each letter of the alphabet. This was indeed a challenge. Some of the phrases created by the children were hilariously funny, and they continued to giggle and repeat these phrases long after poetry tea was over. They love these nonsense poems and delight in them so much that Michael Bento points out in his article the importance of poetry in children's learning, that it is in these poems that language draws attention to itself, and the rhyming words and metrical patterns have the power to conjure experiences seemingly out of thin air. Ant balloon, cat dance, Ethan Frog frolicking, Gorilla Harry Potter, I love Jamie King, Little Lamp Mouse, Noise Orange Patting, Queen Run Rebecca Sock, Talk Umbrella, Van Wonder, X-Ray Yo-Yo Zebra. But why is poetry part of our school's curriculum? Why does poetry matter? To begin with, it encourages creative and abstract thinking and sparks the imagination. It helps children to think outside the box, which is one of the critical skills that 21st century children will need to succeed. It develops memory as the children are asked to figure out what the poem was about or what the rhyming couplets were. Yes, our grade R1 class is learning what a rhyming couplet is in those exact words. We have also just recently learned about alliteration from a poem called Combinations by Mary Ann Hoberman, in which a flea flew by a fly. We've also learned about sarcasm through one of our favorite poems called Today is Very Boring, in which the poet describes a day which is really not boring at all, but rather full of fantastical goings-on. Imagery, simile, and metaphor are some of the important language arts that poetry explores. Poetry allows children to see that language and words can be played with and manipulated. When we read poems, we learn about rhyme and rhythm and the sound of the language in which the poem is written. Poetry is just one of the 100 languages children can use to explore the world they live in. As Michael Bento says, a love of language for its own sake becomes a love of language for the sake of what it can do for us in helping us to represent and understand our experiences.